How's it going, guys? Anfield here. Welcome back to a new video. So today's video we're just going to look at some of the changes to tanks in the 9.20 test server and kind of talk a little bit about what was really done to the tanks and how much better they'll actually be. So what you're seeing right now is a 9.19 sort of race between an IS-7 and a WZ-5A. These tests aren't like super scientific. They're not like perfect. I didn't set them up. It was more so that I could get the feel of the tanks more than anything else. I guess if I could go back and do them again, I would make sure I'm in the exact right positions and doing the exact same maneuvers. It's just difficult to do it that way, but you'll still get the point and general idea. So this is the same test or race, and you'll see this is 9.20. You see the IS-7 is actually pulling away, whereas in the previous time the WZ was actually pulling away from the IS-7. So the engine buffs to the IS-7 are quite significant and will make a big difference for the tank being able to deliver its damage, as well as the 2400 hit points it now has. It means it'll survive longer, which is also very good. So maneuverability and survivability are big buffs to the tank. So yeah, that's pretty good for the IS-7. It still has a poor DPM compared to the WZ, so that's something to keep in mind. It also has less gun depression than the WZ, so also something to keep in mind. But it is at least faster, more HP going for it now, which are big changes. Of course, the other changes we'll be quickly looking at as well are the gun changes. But I kind of found that those were much harder to test, at least in a sort of lab setting. So I guess I'll talk more about how I feel the changes have helped the IS-7. When you do play the IS-7 in 9.19 and then play it again in 9.20, you do actually feel the difference between the two guns, which I guess is the most significant aspect of the tank. It's important to remember also that whatever changes you see here can also be exemplified even further. If the IS-7 happens to be your favorite tank in the game, you can also remember that playing your IS-7 or any tier 10 and getting a full tier 10 battle or the grand battle mode will result in you having the potential to earn bonds. You can now grind out bonds, which I think is actually one of the better changes in the 9.20 test server. I think that's a very, very good change from Wargaming. I'm quite excited. I mean, I haven't really been streaming tanks as much recently because I'm kind of bored with 9.19. I don't really have anything specific to do. But the idea that I can go out and grind bonds and not have to play the cancer game mode that is ranked battles, I'm pretty excited about that. But the point is, now that you can get bonds, you kind of actually augment your tanks even further. Now it's actually more potentially possible. You don't have to wait long periods for the ranked battles to come in. You can actually grind that actively yourself, which is quite cool. So you can think of an IS-7 now and then include an improved rammer, improved stabilization, and whether you prefer GLD or vents, I don't know. But either way, you can improve the tank even further. So it's not just the buffs that you have to consider, it's also the fact that you will be eventually facing more and more tanks with improved equipment. So yeah, if the IS-7 has to be your favorite tank, that'll be pretty good for you as well. So this is just on the move dispersion, which is the major thing that was changed. This is the least sort of scientific of the tests. The tanks are coming from different positions. You also have to consider that 9.20 IS-7 is actually faster, which means it should have a higher dispersion anyway. And also I think one of these is using times 25 zoom. So yeah. But you do get a general idea of the tank being better with its gun handling. So this is testing the new Type 5, which of course, Wargaming said, oh, we were overzealous with buffing this tank. We realized that now we're going to give it weak points. Well, the weak points are these two little slits here. One is 270 and the other is 260. Now these are very high levels of armor for most tanks, but this is considered the weak point of these tanks, which I think is ridiculous because this is completely unangled. The second the tank starts to angle and is moving, that's going to be so much harder to deal with standard rounds. The point was to give them a standard round weak point, but all you've done is you've given it an RNG weak point. Basically, with 250 standard pen that the IS-7 has, you need a high roll in order to secure a penetrating shot, which is just pure RNG, which is frustrating to me. So this is an E50M, which I'm pretty sure has the highest standard pen of a non-tank destroyer at tier 10. I think with the standard run, it's 270. Correct me if I'm wrong. But either way, this is 270, relying on RNG to try and get a pen. I mean, You know, it's just madness. I don't understand Wargaming's point. These weak points should be 200 flat, and that would be fair, I think. So I don't know. I mean, even 220 would be fair, but it's silly that you need a high roll to pen a weak point to me. So this is testing the pattern turret, and what we basically found was that the improvements are quite good. Especially when you're doing moving peaks over a hill, this turret will pretty much be really nice. It's important to remember that, of course, when you're coming over a hill and peaking on tanks, you'll also have your hatch hidden much better. So this is testing 140 overmatch, which we know was basically all but removed. Although this is APCR, so you know you have to keep that in consideration. However, the overmatch is still vulnerable to heat rounds, which are obviously good at dealing with overmatch and have really high pens. So yeah, you can't completely rely on it. And obviously the 140 still has hatches, but it's still a buff, so that's good. So this is 30B. We're just testing basically the 30B armor. We know this mostly the mantlet that was changed, or only the mantlet. The mantlet seems pretty solid, so if people are just snapping at you over hill and they hit your fat mantlet, you know, pretty good. Your turret will still be very vulnerable, and obviously you have the massive hatch, which kind of sucks. Although it doesn't seem that you can overmatch the 30B, so that's interesting. So this was a test actually to see how well this sort of 30B did against an SCB-1. Now, I've been saying that the 30B basically makes the SCB-1 redundant, right? Because the 30B has better DPM now than the SCB-1, and it also has good gun handling, and it's faster. So, yeah, poor SCB-1. However, it did actually win in these exchanges. Could be that Christby is bad. That's a perfectly valid reason to believe that, but it's also because the SCB-1 basically has a really good silhouette. It's a very low profile tank, and it just sort of plays on these hills perfectly. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Just I kind of wanted to see basically how it did. Now, in most situations, like the SCB-1 will win this, but at the end of the day, the 30B is still going to be better. In an overall match, you know, the ability to flex around the map faster and actually deliver that DPM is far better than the small amount of protection you get here from the hills. I mean, granted, the SC1 is less accurate, and it is struggling sometimes to hit the 30B, and a more accurate tank wouldn't struggle as much. But on the same token, like, it's like the SCB1 isn't perfect either. You know, it's still gonna get kind of screwed, which is rip. And in a brawl situation where, you know, you're not playing on hills like this, the SCB1 will miss and bounce shots that the 30B just wouldn't bounce. So this is just testing heat against each other, which I just, you know, was curious to see how well the tanks did against heat. And once again, we will see the SCB-1's gun handling sort of curse it a little bit, but ultimately you'll see it still triumph. But once again, I mean, this is okay. You know, the SCB-1 can win these sort of small engagements, but most of the time, unfortunately, it will lose in an overall game because the 30B is faster, delivers that damage better. So now that the SCB-1's not like the best DPM tank among the mediums, I kind of feel like it does need a little bit of love. You can't overbuff it too much, so I would be careful how you do it, but I would maybe give it a little bit of gun handling. Again, not too much, because if you give this tank too much gun handling, you're going to have a problem of a monster tank. Due to this tank's sort of much better silhouette, like I was talking about. The 30B is much more vulnerable than the SCB-1, although both tanks, without the hills to complement them, you know, it's not like you could put a piece of rubble here and expect the SCB-1 to bounce everything from its turret. Its turret actually isn't that good. It's just how the hill angles it a little bit more. But yeah, I think the SC1 could use a little bit of love now that 30B's been buffed. Because the way I see it is, Wargaming seem to be overbuffing every single tank that's not like super meta already, or even some tanks that are meta. And if you're gonna do that, you kind of have to give them all a little bit more love, you know, especially like the Leopard 1 and even now the SCB1 with the 30B buffs. You can't just leave them alone, you know. With the 30B and being in the state that it is. So I would like to see the SCB-1 get a little bit of love, because I really do like the tank, and I mean, it's a gorgeous looking tank. How can you not like the SCB-1? So yeah, I mean, balance wise, it makes sense for Wargaming to sort of give it a touch up, but God, I can't wait till that tank is HD though. yeah, so this is a 5100, which I thought some of you might be interested to see, so I'm just going to quickly show it off. Basically, it was given gun depression, which is quite a significant change for the 5100. It's got really good gun depression now, and it's actually able to deliver its damage much easier when you're playing on hills and things like that, which will make a big difference. So this is a Foch B, and this is a tank that I've seen a lot of chatter about. People seem to be like, oh my god, it's super OP, it's like the new Waffle E100. No, it's really not. I'm not sure where the overreaction is coming from or why it's being perpetrated, but yes, it has very high potential clip damage, but it's gonna struggle so much to get that clip potential damage out. And it's like what, one more shot than basically what the bat shot was doing? I don't really seem to care about the bat shot, and that tank actually gets that damage out. It's fast as fuck. Yeah, here we have a tank destroyer with a very low pen, so you have to use APCR to pen most tier 10s frontally. That basically has kind of mediocre maneuverability, very poor frontal armor, very easy weak point to farm, and you know, mediocre gun handling. It's okay, but it's not crazy. The only times really a Foch B is gonna get to clip someone out in the way that people seem to fear is that tank going broadside in the open. Then maybe, yeah, it clips someone out. The tank has a lot of potential, but I actually think it needs buffs, not nerfs, to be perfectly frank with you guys. I mean, to get the damage out in this tank is so difficult, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think anyway in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed the video. I wanted to cover most things that you would be maybe interested in seeing, but if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you on the next video.